Squad Commander Kale squinted through his exosuit's visor at the deceptively peaceful Montana Plateau stretching before him. Rolling grasslands swayed in a gentle breeze under the pale blue sky of this supposedly safe region of Earth. Intelligence had classified this area as Earth's least threatening zone, perfect for their beachhead operation. As leader of 1,000 elite Deathworlders, soldiers bred and trained on the harshest planets in the galaxy, Kale's mission was straightforward: secure this plateau and prove that even Earth, the most notorious death world in the Coalition's database, could be conquered. Perimeter secure. Commander. His second-in-command, Logistic Officer Vrax, approached with the mechanical precision that had earned him 3 void medals. Initial scans match intelligence reports. Minimal fauna activity. Negligible toxicity readings. Kale nodded, the motion barely visible inside his Class 8 environmental suit. The Coalition had spent decades studying Earth from afar, cataloging its hazards, monitoring its primitive but surprisingly resilient inhabitants. This mission would finally demonstrate that even Deathworlders, the galaxy's premier shock troops, could establish dominance here. "Science Division report," Kale commanded through the battalion frequency. Science Officer Melix's voice crackled through with its usual academic detachment. "Confirming safe atmospheric composition within tolerance ranges. Local flora categorized as non-predatory grasses and simple flowering plants. Fauna limited to small herbivores and non-venomous insects. The plateau is exactly as our simulations predicted. Earth's safest zone." Something in Melix's voice betrayed the slightest uncertainty. Kale had served with the scientist long enough to detect it, but chose not to challenge it publicly. They had a mission to complete. "First wave, deploy and establish forward positions," Kale ordered. 200 Deathworlders moved in perfect formation across the grassland. Their exosuits, pinnacles of Coalition technology, were designed to withstand acid storms, crushing pressures, and temperatures that would vaporize unprotected flesh. Earth's benign environment barely registered on their threat detectors. Veteran Squad Leader Thorn took point, his decorated exosuit bearing the scars of 20 campaigns across worlds that would kill most sentients in seconds. He paused to examine a small flying insect with scythe-like wings that hovered near his visor. "Science Division," Thorn transmitted. "Confirm classification of indigenous arthropod." Melix's response was immediate. "Standard dipteran species. Harmless nectar feeder." Thorn reached up casually to brush the insect away. In the next instant, his suit's emergency beacon blared across all frequencies. The insect had somehow penetrated his helmet seal and latched onto his neck. Before anyone could reach him, the veteran of 20 Deathworld campaigns collapsed, his vital signs flatlined. Dead, killed by what their extensive intelligence had classified as a harmless insect. Kale rushed to Thorn's side, signaling for a medical unit. When they removed the helmet, they found the tiny creature had severed Thorn's spinal cord with surgical precision. Silence fell across the battalion frequency as the reality sank in. They had lost their first soldier within minutes of landing, to a creature their science division had dismissed as harmless. Kale stared at Melix, whose green-tinged face behind their visor had gone pale. "Commander," Vrax said stiffly, "request permission to initiate full combat protocols." Kale looked out at the seemingly peaceful grasslands, now transformed in his perception. "Granted. All units maintain maximum alert status. Science Division, recalibrate all threat assessments." As he gave the order, Kale couldn't shake the unsettling thought that their intelligence on Earth might be catastrophically wrong. What other harmless threats awaited them in Earth's safest zone? The dropships departed, leaving them committed to their mission. 1,000 Deathworlders against Earth. The conquest had barely begun, and already the death count had started. As night fell on the plateau, emergency beacons had already claimed 7 more lives. The Coalition had gravely underestimated Earth. Science Officer Melix hunched over portable analysis equipment inside the hastily established command post. His slender fingers trembled slightly as he examined the remains of the scythe-winged insect that had killed Thorn. "It's not even a predator," Melix muttered, disbelief evident in his voice. "It evolved those appendages to slice through thick petaled flowers. The attack was incidental, pure bad luck." Kale stood behind him, arms crossed. "Bad luck has killed 8 of my soldiers in 12 hours. Science Officer, I need explanations, not excuses." Melix's shoulders slumped. "Our entire classification system is flawed. Commander, we categorized Earth's life forms based on intent and evolutionary purpose. But what we're seeing suggests Earth's organisms don't need predatory intent to be lethal." "Meaning?" "Meaning," Melix said, turning to face Kale, "that even Earth's safest zone is filled with accidental killers. Organisms that aren't trying to hunt us, but can kill us anyway through random interaction." Logistic Officer Vrax entered the command post, his posture rigid despite the weight of his exosuit. "Perimeter teams report unusual movement in the vegetation to the east. Permission to deploy sonic deterrence." "Denied," Kale replied. "We know nothing about how the local wildlife might react. Maintain observation only." Vrax's face hardened. "With respect, Commander, this mission requires aggressive posture. Coalition protocol?" "Coalition protocol assumed our intelligence was accurate," Kale cut him off. "It wasn't. We adapt or we die." "The Coalition expects results, not excuses," Vrax countered. "We were selected for this mission because Deathworlders don't retreat." Before Kale could respond, the emergency channel erupted with panicked transmissions. "Command, Eastern Quadrant under attack. It's the plants. They're—" The transmission dissolved into screaming. Kale rushed outside to witness chaos. A patch of what had appeared to be innocuous purple-spined desert thistle had released clouds of spores into the air around a squad of 30 Deathworlders. The soldiers staggered, firing weapons randomly, some collapsing to their knees. "Seal all suits," Kale commanded through the general frequency. "Medical units stand by." He approached the affected area cautiously. The soldiers weren't dead, but many thrashed on the ground, screaming about visions of homeworlds they'd never see again, of family members long dead. Others fired at hallucinated enemies or fled from unseen horrors. Melix arrived at his side, sensor equipment in hand. "Hallucinogenic neurotoxin," he reported, "designed to confuse grazing animals. The spores. They've penetrated our filtration systems." "How?" Vrax demanded, arriving with a security team. "Our suits withstand molecular acid. These spores mimic oxygen molecules," Melix explained, horror dawning on his face. "Our filters are designed to let oxygen through." Kale watched as medical teams attempted to sedate the affected soldiers. Half a squad lost to a defense mechanism of a plant their scans had classified as a harmless wildflower. "Reconfigure all suit filters," Kale ordered. "Maximum restriction protocols." "That will reduce oxygen efficiency by 40%, Vrax objected. "Combat effectiveness will be compromised." "Better compromised than hallucinating," Kale replied grimly. As the medical teams worked, Kale pulled Melix aside. "I need better answers. How did our intelligence miss these threats?" Melix couldn't meet his gaze. "We studied Earth primarily through remote observation and limited sampling. Our paradigm was fundamentally flawed. We classified threats based on their evolutionary purpose, rather than their potential effect. And now? Now I understand that on Earth, even benign adaptations can be lethal to outsiders. The thistle didn't evolve to kill sentience. It evolved to discourage herbivores. But to us." Melix gestured at the incapacitated soldiers. A transmission from the western perimeter interrupted them. "Movement detected. Small quadrupeds approaching in large numbers." Kale rushed to the western edge of their encampment. Through his visor, he saw what appeared to be hundreds of small, furry creatures with long ears, bounding across the grassland toward their position. Rabbits, Melix identified, consulting his database. Herbivorous mammals. Non-threatening. Take no chances, Kale ordered the perimeter guards. Defensive positions only. Do not fire unless directly threatened. The soldiers formed a line, weapons ready but restrained. The mass of rabbits continued their approach, seemingly oblivious to the armed forces ahead. They're just passing through, one soldier remarked. Probably fleeing a predator. Just as the words left his mouth, the rabbits hit their line like a furry avalanche. Despite their small size, the combined momentum of hundreds of panicked animals knocked several soldiers off their feet. 3 of the battalion's walker units toppled over, their pilots unable to stabilize against the unexpected surge. "Hold position!" Kale commanded, bracing himself as rabbits bounded past, some even using his armored form as a springboard. In minutes, the stampede had passed, leaving bewildered soldiers in its wake. Equipment lay scattered. 2 walkers were damaged beyond field repair, and several soldiers reported minor injuries from falls. "Non-threatening?" Vrax spat the words at Melix. "Your classifications are worse than useless." "This wasn't an attack," Melix protested. "They were fleeing something." As if on cue, a distant rumbling sound grew louder. Kale signaled for silence, straining to identify the noise. It sounded mechanical, not biological, a series of engines. "Contact approaching," the forward scout reported. "Primitive ground vehicles, humans." Kale felt a chill. Their mission parameters specified avoiding human contact during the initial phase. The coalition wanted the beachhead established before revealing their presence. "Defensive formation," he ordered. "Non-lethal protocols. We are not here to engage humans." 3 dust-trailing vehicles appeared on the horizon, what the database identified as pickup trucks. Primitive but effective ground transportation. They approached rapidly, bouncing over the uneven terrain with surprising agility. "Weapon signatures detected," the tactical officer reported. "Primitive chemical propellant firearms." "Hold positions," Kale reiterated. "Defensive shields only." The trucks skidded to a stop about 200 meters from their position. 6 humans emerged, their expressions difficult to read at this distance. They wore no apparent armor, just fabric coverings that offered no meaningful protection. Yet they moved with the confidence of beings who feared no threat on their homeworld. One human, larger than the others with facial hair and a wide-brimmed head covering, stepped forward and shouted something. "Translation systems active," Melix reported. "They're asking who we are and what we're doing on private property." "No response," Kale commanded. "Maintain position." The humans conferred briefly. Then, to Kale's alarm, they began unloading objects from their vehicles, cylindrical containers, and what appeared to be launching tubes. "Weapon systems?" Vrax asked, tensing. "Uncertain," Melix replied, scanning frantically. "Primitive technology, but—" The humans lit fuses on their devices. Moments later, the sky erupted with explosions of colored light and deafening booms. "Under attack!" Vrax shouted, raising his weapon. "Hold!" Kale commanded. But it was too late. The combination of unexpected explosions, flashing lights, and concussive sound triggered combat reflexes among his soldiers. Several opened fire with non-lethal suppressants. The humans dove behind their vehicles, returning fire with their primitive weapons. Ineffective against the Deathworlders' armor. But the intent was clear. The first contact with humans had descended into combat. Worse, the explosive devices the humans had deployed weren't weapons at all. Melix's frantic analysis identified them as fireworks, ceremonial explosives used for entertainment. They posed no threat to armored Deathworlders, yet the soldiers had reacted as if under serious attack. As Kale tried to regain control of his forces, he noticed something even more alarming. The explosions and weapons fire had disturbed more of the local wildlife. Birds took flight in massive flocks, their patterns chaotic and disorienting, From the trees at the edge of the plateau, larger animals emerged, fleeing the noise. "Pull back," Kale ordered. "Defensive perimeter around the command post." The skirmish with the humans had triggered a cascade of environmental reactions. Within minutes, Kale's organized force of Deathworlders had fragmented into confused units, dealing with stampeding wildlife, disorienting fireworks, and their first hostile encounter with humans. As darkness fell again, Kale tallied their losses. 15 dead, 48 injured or incapacitated, nearly 100 lost to hallucinogenic spores with uncertain recovery prospects, all from what was supposed to be Earth's safest zone. In the command post, Vrax confronted him directly. "This mission is compromised. We should call for extraction and orbital bombardment." "That's not our mission," Kale replied firmly. "We were sent to establish a beachhead, not start a war." "We're already at war," Vrax insisted. "These humans attacked us." "After we established a position on their territory without communication," Kale countered. "We violated their sovereignty." Melix, who had been quietly analyzing data, looked up. "Commander, I'm detecting a new energy signature. Something's entering the atmosphere above us." Kale felt a surge of hope. "Coalition reinforcements?" Melix's expression darkened. "No. The energy signature doesn't match coalition technology. It's something else." As if to confirm his words, the night sky above the plateau lit up with the unmistakable glow of a massive ship entering the atmosphere. But its design was neither coalition nor Earth technology. The angular, obsidian form of a Void Regime warship descended toward their position. "Void Regime," Vrax whispered, genuine fear cracking his disciplined facade. "Here? Now?" Kale stared at the approaching ship. The Void Regime, opportunistic scavengers who followed in the wake of coalition expansions, harvesting resources and sometimes entire species in their path. Not officially enemies of the coalition, but certainly not allies. "They must have detected our dropships," Melix suggested. "They're here to see what the coalition wants with Earth." "Or to take it for themselves," Kale added grimly. The implications were clear. Their mission had just become infinitely more complicated. Not only were they struggling against Earth's unexpectedly lethal environment and hostile locals, but now they faced potential interference from the Void Regime. The warship settled on the far side of the plateau, its massive form casting an unnatural shadow even in the darkness. Spotlights activated, scanning the area, searching. "Options," Kale asked his officers. Vrax straightened. "We follow protocol. Establish the beachhead as ordered. Eliminate any interference, human or Void Regime." Melix shook his head. "With respect, that's suicide. We've lost over 100 soldiers to this environment alone. We can't fight the Void Regime simultaneously." "We're Deathworlders," Vrax countered. "We don't retreat." Kale studied the tactical display. Their force was already compromised, scattered across the plateau dealing with environmental hazards they barely understood. The humans, while technologically primitive, were on their home territory and clearly willing to defend it. And now, the Void Regime, opportunistic and ruthless, had arrived with unknown intentions. "New mission parameters," Kale decided. "We establish contact with the local humans." "What?" Vrax nearly shouted. "That violates every protocol." "Protocol assumed accurate intelligence," Kale replied. "We need local knowledge to survive this environment, and the humans will need our help against the Void Regime. Their primitive weapons won't stand a chance." "You're suggesting an alliance? With Deathworld primitives?" Vrax's disgust was evident. "I'm suggesting survival," Kale said firmly. "Gather all functional units. We move to intercept the human settlement before the Void Regime finds them." As Kale issued orders to his remaining forces, he couldn't shake the feeling that everything about this mission had been wrong from the start. The Coalition's understanding of Earth, their classification of threats, their strategy for conquest, all fundamentally flawed. And now, in a twist he could never have anticipated. He was about to propose an alliance with the very species they had come to subjugate. All because Earth's safest zone had proven more lethal than anyone could have imagined. Dawn broke over the plateau, painting the landscape in hues of gold and amber that belied the deadly reality beneath the beauty. Kale led his remaining functional troops, just over 600 now, toward the human settlement they'd identified from their initial scans. "Commander," Melix reported, monitoring their surroundings with heightened vigilance. "The Void Regime vessel has deployed ground forces. They're moving in a search pattern across the plateau." "Composition?" Kale asked. "Standard harvester units, resource identification and extraction drones, supported by combat frames. They're not here for conquest. They're here to strip mine," Kale concluded grimly. The Void Regime's typical approach: find valuable resources, extract them with brutal efficiency, and leave devastated wastelands behind. "The humans won't stand a chance," Melix added unnecessarily. They crested a small rise and saw the human settlement below, a collection of simple structures surrounded by fenced areas containing animals and growing plants. Primitive, but with a certain order to its arrangement. Smoke rose from one building where the humans they'd encountered earlier had gathered, their vehicles parked nearby. "Hold position," Kale ordered. "Melix, you're with me. Vrax, establish a perimeter and watch for Void Regime movement." Vrax's face hardened. "This is a mistake, Commander. These humans attacked us." "They defended their territory," Kale corrected. "Now we all face a common enemy." Leaving most of his forces on the ridge, Kale descended toward the settlement with Melix and 2 guards. They approached openly, weapon systems visibly powered down, using universal peace protocols. The humans noticed them immediately. The largest one, the same bearded individual from before, emerged from the main building, carrying a primitive firearm. 5 others joined him, similarly armed. "Translation systems active," Melix confirmed. Kale raised his hands in the universal gesture of non-aggression and deactivated his helmet, exposing his face to Earth's atmosphere, a calculated risk to show trust. The filtered air felt strangely rich, almost intoxicating after the recycled atmosphere of his suit. "We come in peace," he said, the translation system converting his words to the local language. "Your world faces a threat greater than us." The bearded human narrowed his eyes. "You shot at us, then talk peace? Typical city folk tactics." Kale wasn't sure what city folk meant, but understood the skepticism. "That was a misunderstanding. We reacted poorly to your fireworks." "Fireworks?" The human barked a strange sound that Melix's systems identified as laughter. "Those were just leftover bottle rockets from Independence Day. If we wanted to hurt you, we'd have brought Jeb's fertilizer bombs." The casual mention of improvised explosives gave Kale pause. These humans were more tactically resourceful than Coalition intelligence had suggested. "I am Squad Commander Kale of the Coalition Deathworlder Battalion. We came to your world to establish a presence. Yes. But now, a greater threat has arrived." He gestured toward the distant form of the Void Regime warship, now visible even from the settlement. "They will destroy everything in their path." The bearded human studied the ship for a long moment, then spat on the ground. "Name's John. People call me Big John. Don't much care who you are or what that thing is. This is my family's land for 4 generations, and nobody's taking it. Not you. Not them." Melix stepped forward. "The technology gap between your weapons and theirs is greater than between a stone and a star. You cannot stop them alone." Big Jan looked at his companions, then back at Kale. "And I suppose you're offering to help out of the goodness of your heart?" "Mutual survival," Kale clarified. "We've lost hundreds of soldiers to your world's hazards already. We need your knowledge of this environment to survive. You need our technology to have any hope against the Void Regime." A tense silence followed. Big Jan conferred with the others in low voices, occasionally glancing at the distant warship. Finally, he turned back to Kale. "You aliens don't understand Earth at all, do you?" he asked, a strange expression on his face. "Coming here thinking you're all superior with your fancy suits and weapons. First day here and you're already begging for help." Kale suppressed his pride. "We miscalculated." "Damn right you did." Big Jan shouldered his weapon. "All right, temporary truce. But you follow our lead when it comes to moving around. We know what kills and what doesn't." Kale nodded. "Agreed." As if to punctuate their fragile alliance, a distant explosion echoed across the plateau. All eyes turned to see a plume of smoke rising from where the Void regime forces had begun their harvesting operations. "They're starting with the northern mineral deposits," Melix observed. "Standard extraction protocol." "How long until they reach this settlement?" Kale asked. Melix calculated quickly. "At their current rate of expansion, less than 6 hours." Big Jan frowned. "What exactly are they after?" "Everything," Kale answered grimly. "Minerals, biological samples, technological artifacts. The Void regime are cosmic scavengers. They take anything of value and leave wastelands behind." "Not on my ranch," Big Jan declared. He turned to his companions. "Call everyone within 50 miles. Tell them to bring everything that goes boom." Kale was about to question the effectiveness of local explosives against Void regime technology when a commotion from the ridge interrupted them. Vrax was racing down the slope, his movements betraying urgency. "Commander," he called. "Void regime harvester drones have changed course. They're heading directly for us. We've been detected." Kale turned to Big Jan. "We need to move! Now!" Big Jan's eyes narrowed. "Nobody runs from a fight on Montana soil. We make our stand here." "That's suicide," Vrax argued. "Maybe for you, city folk," Big Jan replied with unexpected calm. "But we've been preparing for government invasions for generations. The ranch has defenses." Kale looked at the primitive structures doubtfully, but something in Big Jan's confidence gave him pause. "What kind of defenses?" The human smiled for the first time, revealing teeth stained by some local custom. "The kind that work best when the enemy doesn't see them coming." As Kale's remaining forces converged on the ranch and the Void regime harvesters approached from the north, an unlikely alliance took shape. Human pickup trucks raced across the countryside, bringing neighbors with an assortment of weapons and explosives that Melix's scans identified as surprisingly volatile. The Coalition's elite Deathworlders, bred and trained to survive the harshest environments in the galaxy, found themselves taking tactical direction from humans whose technology was centuries behind their own. The irony wasn't lost on Kale. "Their extraction pattern indicates they'll approach from 3 vectors," Vrax explained, displaying a tactical projection for the assembled humans and Deathworlders. "Standard Void regime formation. Harvester drones in the center. Combat frames on the flanks." Big Jan nodded thoughtfully. "So they're expecting resistance from the front, with those fighter things protecting their sides." "Correct," Vrax confirmed, surprised by the humans' quick grasp of tactics. "Then we hit 'em where they ain't looking," Big Jan declared. He pointed to the tactical display. "Jeb, take your boys and set up the tannerite charges here and here, behind their path. Marlene, your family still got those illegal mortars from the border wars?" A woman with weathered skin nodded. 2 crates worth." "Good. Set them up to crossfire from these ridges." Big Jan turned to Kale. "Your people any good at digging?" Kale blinked at the unexpected question. "Deathworlders excel at all forms of combat engineering." "Then I need 3 trenches. Here, here and here." Big Jan indicated positions that Kale realized would funnel the Void regime forces into a natural depression. "Deep enough that those harvester things can't climb out easy." Vrax began to protest. "Our weapon systems." "Won't work right," Big Jan interrupted. "Not sure what you folks are used to fighting, but around here, We know a thing or two about what works when technology fails. Malix, who had been analyzing soil samples, looked up with sudden understanding. He's right, Commander. The mineral composition in this region creates localized electromagnetic disruption fields. It's why our communications have been experiencing interference. The iron in the hills plays hell with electronics, Big Jan confirmed. Found that out when the government tried drone surveillance on us a few years back. Crashed every last one of them. Kale reassessed the human with new respect. You're suggesting we lure the Void Regime forces into a natural trap where their systems will malfunction. Then we hit 'em with good old-fashioned boom. Big Jan finished, a gleam in his eye. Nothing fancy, just fire and fury. It was a primitive strategy by coalition standards, relying on terrain and simple explosives rather than advanced targeting systems and energy weapons. But Kale had already learned the hard way that coalition standards meant little on Earth. We'll follow your lead, he decided, ignoring Vrax's visible disapproval. As the unlikely allies prepared their defenses, Kale found himself working alongside Big Jan, digging one of the trenches with a primitive hand tool the human called a shovel. Never thought I'd be fighting alongside aliens, Big Jan remarked. My grandpappy would have shot you on sight. And my commanders would have ordered your world sterilized from orbit, Kale replied honestly. Big Jan laughed. Guess we're both disappointing our ancestors today. The human's casual humor in the face of existential threat was puzzling to Kale. Throughout the coalition, Earth was known as the deadliest death world, its inhabitants extraordinarily dangerous. Yet these humans approached combat against superior forces with almost cheerful determination. You don't seem concerned about our chances, Kale observed. Big Jan shrugged, continuing to dig. Been outgunned before. Government tried to take our water rights 10 years back. Sent a whole platoon. Didn't work out for them either. The Void Regime is not your government, Kale warned. They've stripped entire worlds bare. Maybe, Big Jan paused, leaning on his shovel. But they ain't ever tried to strip Montana. As dusk approached, their preparations were complete. The ranch had been transformed into an elaborate trap, trenches concealed under lightweight coverings, explosive charges buried at strategic points, and the humans' primitive but surprisingly powerful weapons positioned for maximum effect. Kale's remaining Deathworlders, now just over 500 after more, had succumbed to various environmental hazards during the day's work, were integrated into the defensive positions alongside the humans. It was an unorthodox formation that violated every principle of coalition tactical doctrine. But Kale had stopped trusting doctrine the moment they'd landed on Earth. Void Regime forces approaching, Melix reported from his monitoring position. 3 kilometers enclosing. Harvester drones in the lead. Combat frames on the flanks. Exactly as predicted. All units maintain concealment, Kale ordered through the command frequency. Follow the human signal for engagement. The massive Harvester drones came into view first, floating rhomboid platforms bristling with extraction equipment, each the size of 3 coalition dropships combined. They moved with ponderous purpose, their energy fields visibly disrupting the air around them. Behind them, the combat frames prowled, angular constructs of black metal and pulsing energy, designed to eliminate any resistance to the harvesting operation. The Void Regime rarely bothered with live troops, preferring automated systems for their efficiency and disposability. Hold, Big Jan murmured into a primitive radio device. Let them get deeper into the valley. The waiting was the hardest part. Deathworlder training emphasized immediate, overwhelming response to threats. Patience was not a virtue cultivated in soldiers, bred for frontline assaults on hostile worlds. Kale could feel the tension in his troops, the urge to engage before the enemy closed to optimal range. The lead Harvester drone passed over the first concealed trench, its sensors failing to detect the trap below, just as planned. The electromagnetic properties of the local minerals were already affecting its systems. Now! Big Jan shouted, and the human woman named Marlene triggered the first volley of mortars. The primitive explosives arced through the evening sky, raining down on the Void Regime formation with surprising accuracy. They detonated against the Harvester drone's energy fields, not penetrating, but disrupting their stabilization systems. As the Harvesters wavered, the combat frames moved to protective positions, their weapon systems charging. That's when the humans triggered the buried charges beneath them. The explosions weren't powerful enough to destroy the frames, but the combination of concussive force and electromagnetic disruption sent several tumbling into the concealed trenches. "Deathworlders, engage!" Kale commanded. His soldiers emerged from concealment, energy weapons targeting the disoriented combat frames. Under normal circumstances, Coalition weapons would have little effect on Void Regime shields. But in this electromagnetically disrupted environment, with the frames already destabilized, the concentrated fire began to penetrate. The battle devolved into chaotic close-quarters combat as more Void Regime forces poured into the valley. Deathworlders found themselves fighting alongside humans who wielded primitive but effective weapons with surprising skill. Kale fought his way toward the command harvester, recognizing it by the distinct energy signature Melix had identified. If they could disable the central control node, the entire Void Regime force would be temporarily directionless. "Commander!" Vrax's voice crackled through the interference. "The primary harvester is deploying an energy dissipator. Our weapons will be useless." Kale saw it, a spherical device rising from the harvester's central platform, beginning to pulse with ominous energy. If activated, it would neutralize all energy-based weapons in its radius, leaving the Deathworlders defenseless, while the Void Regime's mechanized forces would continue functioning. "Fall back to secondary positions," Kale ordered. This contingency wasn't in their plan. The energy dissipator was technology the Coalition had only encountered in rumors. As his forces began a tactical retreat, Kale noticed something unexpected. The humans weren't falling back. Instead, they were advancing toward the harvester, carrying what appeared to be glass containers filled with liquid. "What are they doing?" Vrax demanded, watching in bewilderment as Big Jan led a charge directly toward the most dangerous enemy position. "I don't know," Kale admitted. The human tactics had seemed primitive but logical until now. This looked like suicide. Big Jan reached the base of the hovering harvester, ducked under a swinging mechanical appendage, and hurled his glass container at the energy dissipator. It shattered, spraying liquid across the device. Other humans followed suit, their containers breaking against various parts of the harvester. For a moment, nothing happened. Then one human, a younger male with facial markings, flicked a small flame-producing device and tossed it at the harvester. The liquid ignited with explosive force, blue-white flames racing across the harvester's surface. The energy dissipator sparked, then exploded in a cascade of system failures. "What is that substance?" Kale asked in astonishment as the harvester began to list to one side, its systems failing catastrophically. Melix, who had been analyzing the battle from a protected position, replied with audible disbelief. "Primitive alcohol, ethanol distilled through crude processes. They're using their recreational intoxicants as weapons." "Moonshine Molotovs!" Big Jan shouted, with fierce joy as the harvester crashed to the ground. "Jeb's Special Reserve, 180 proof." The humans' inexplicable tactic had succeeded where Coalition energy weapons would have failed. The harvester's sophisticated systems, calibrated to resist advanced attacks, had no defense against burning liquid seeping into its components. "All units, adapt strategy," Kale commanded. "Target structural vulnerabilities with kinetic force." The tide of battle shifted. Deathworlders abandoned their energy weapons for physical attacks, targeting joints and sensor arrays on the combat frames. Humans continued their assault with improvised explosives and incendiary devices that bypassed the Void Regime's energy defenses through sheer primitive simplicity. But the Void Regime forces were numerous, and for every drone or frame they destroyed, two more advanced from the warship. The defenders were being pushed back toward the ranch buildings, despite their initial success. "We can't sustain this," Vrax reported, his exosuit damaged and venting coolant. "Their numbers are too great." Kale assessed their situation grimly. They had perhaps 300 Deathworlders still combat effective, alongside 60 or 70 humans. The Void regime had already deployed at least 1,000 combat frames and showed no signs of slowing. "We need to target the source," Kale decided. "The warship itself." "Impossible," Vrax objected. "Our weapons can't penetrate its hull, and we have no air support." Big Jan, overhearing as he reloaded a primitive projectile weapon, interjected. "We don't need to destroy it. Just make it not worth their while to stay." "Explain," Kale demanded. "These things are here for resources, right? They want our stuff?" When Kale nodded, Big Jan continued. "Then we poison the well. Make 'em think this place ain't worth harvesting." Malix joined their huddled conference. His scientific curiosity piqued. "How?" Big Jan grinned. "Same way my grandpappy drove off the mining companies. We blow the North Ridge. Geological surveys show it's holding back an underground lake of sulfur water. We release that. It'll contaminate every mineral deposit on the plateau. They'll detect the deception eventually," Vrax argued. "Sure, but will they stick around to verify or just move on to easier pickings?" Big Jan countered. It was a gamble, but one with logic behind it. The Void regime were opportunists, not conquerors. If a harvesting operation became too costly or complex, they typically abandoned it for more accessible targets. "How do we trigger this collapse?" Kale asked. Big Jan pointed to a distant ridgeline. "Got enough dynamite stashed up there to move a mountain. Problem is getting to it and setting it off. Need someone to get through their lines. Place the charges just right, and trigger them manually." "A suicide mission," Vrax observed flatly. Big Jan nodded solemnly. "Pretty much." Kale made his decision instantly. "I'll go." "Commander, no," Vrax protested. "Send a strike team." "A team would be detected," Kale replied. "One soldier has the best chance of infiltration." He turned to Big Jan. "Guide me to the explosives cache. I'll handle the rest." The human studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "Follow me. We'll take the old mining tunnel. It'll get us halfway there underground." As they broke away from the main battle, Malix called after them. "Commander, what are our orders?" "Hold the line," Kale replied simply. "Give us time." The mining tunnel was a cramped, earthen passage barely wide enough for Kale's armored form. He was forced to remove portions of his exosuit just to navigate the narrow confines, leaving him more vulnerable to Earth's environment than any Deathworlder should be. "Your people really don't understand Earth at all," Big Jan remarked as they crawled through the darkness. "Coming here in those sealed suits, treating everything like it's out to kill you." "Isn't it?" Kale asked, genuinely curious. "Your world has claimed hundreds of my soldiers in days." Big Jan chuckled. "Earth ain't trying to kill nobody. It's just living its life. You folks just don't know how to live with it." The concept was alien to Kale. On Deathworlds, survival was a constant battle against environments explicitly hostile to life. The idea of simply living with such dangers was revolutionary. They emerged from the tunnel onto a forested slope. In the distance, the battle continued. Flashes of energy weapons and explosions, illuminating the darkening sky. "Dynamite stashed in that old shed." Big Jan pointed to a weathered structure half hidden among trees. "Enough to bring down the whole ridge. Timer's busted, though. Gotta trigger it manually." "Meaning?" "Meaning whoever sets it off ain't walking away," Big Jan said bluntly. Kale nodded. "I understand." They reached the shed and found the explosives, primitive chemical compounds that Malix would have dismissed as ineffective against advanced technology. But Kale had learned not to underestimate Earth's simple solutions. "I'll take it from here," Kale told the human. "Return to your people." Big Jan hesitated. "You sure about this? You barely understand our world." "I understand enough," Kale replied. Your people deserve to defend their home. Mine came as invaders. This is appropriate. The human extended his hand, a local gesture Kale had observed. Good luck, alien. For what it's worth, you're all right for an invader. Kale mimicked the gesture, gripping Big Jan's hand briefly. And you're formidable for a primitive? They shared a moment of understanding that transcended their differences. Then parted ways, Big Jan returning to the battle, Kale continuing up the ridge with the explosives. The geological weak point was obvious even to Kale's untrained eye, a section of the ridge where erosion had already begun the process of collapse. He placed the explosives according to Big Jan's instructions, working methodically, despite the distant sounds of combat growing more intense. His communication system, partially functional despite the interference, brought fragments of the battle to his ears. Vracs coordinating defensive positions, Maliks identifying vulnerabilities in void regime systems, humans shouting encouragement to each other in their colorful idioms. His Deathworlders fighting alongside Deathworld natives, an alliance he could never have imagined when they landed. With the explosives in place, Kale stood at the trigger mechanism, a simple plunger that would complete the circuit and detonate the charges. From this position, he could see the entire plateau spread before him, the ranch buildings, the battling forces, and beyond them, the massive void regime warship hovering menacingly. He thought of the Coalition's plans for Earth, the arrogance of believing they understood this world enough to conquer it. They had classified Earth as a death world, yes, but had fundamentally misunderstood its nature. The danger wasn't in explicitly hostile environments like acid storms or extreme temperatures. It was in the chaotic interconnectedness of seemingly benign elements, insects that could kill without malice, plants that defended themselves with hallucinations, herbivores that became lethal in panic, humans who turned recreational drinks into weapons. Earth wasn't a death world. It was a life world so vibrant and interconnected that outsiders couldn't survive its complexity. Kale pressed the detonator. The explosion was far larger than he anticipated, the force throwing him backward as the ridge collapsed beneath him. Tons of rock and soil cascaded down, revealing the underground lake Big Jan had described. Sulfurous water gushed forth, flooding across the mineral-rich plateau in a toxic tide. As Kale tumbled down with the collapsing ridge, consciousness fading. His last sight was of the void regime warship's lights, flickering as its sensors detected the contamination spreading across its harvesting zone. The ship began to rise, abandoning its ground forces as the operation's cost-benefit calculation shifted unfavorably. His mission complete, Commander Kale of the Coalition Deathworlder Battalion surrendered to darkness. He's waking up! Get Dr. Palmer! Consciousness returned to Kale in fragments. Pain first. His body felt broken in multiple places. Then awareness of his surroundings. Unfamiliar sounds, smells, textures. He was lying on something soft, in an enclosed space constructed of processed vegetation. Wood. His database supplied. A human dwelling. He opened his eyes to see Big Jan's bearded face, looking down at him with an expression Maliks's cultural analysis would have classified as concern. "Welcome back to the land of the living, Commander," the human said. "Thought we'd lost you in that rock slide." Kale attempted to sit up but found his body uncooperative. "My soldiers?" Big Jan's expression sobered. "About 200 made it. The rest, well, Earth claimed them one way or another. Most in the battle. 200 survivors from 1,000 Deathworlders. An 80% casualty rate on what was supposed to be a simple beachhead operation. The Coalition would classify this as a catastrophic failure. And the Void Regime? Ran off with their tail between their legs once that sulfur water hit their precious mining operation. Big Jan said with evident satisfaction. Left all their ground troops behind. We've been picking them off for the past 3 days. 3 days. Kale realized he'd been unconscious for far longer than he'd thought. You took a hell of a beating in that collapse. Dr. Palmer says you've got a unique physiology. Heals faster than ours, but still needs time. An older human female entered the room, carrying primitive medical implements. Good. You're awake. Any nausea? Visual disturbances? Kale submitted to her examination with bemusement. Coalition medical technology was centuries beyond these simple tools. Yet this human handled them with confident expertise. "Where are my officers?" he asked when she finished. "The logical one, Vrax. He took most of your survivors and headed for your landing zone. Said something about reporting back to your coalition." Big Jan seemed uncomfortable. "Your science officer stayed behind with about 50 others. Said they wanted to learn more about Earth before deciding." So Vrax had maintained protocol, seeking to salvage something from the mission. But Melix and the others had chosen a different path. Interesting. "And what happens now?" Kale asked. Big Jan shrugged. "That's up to you. I reckon you're welcome to stay until you heal up proper. After that," he gestured vaguely, "world's a big place." The implications were clear. This human, this primitive from a death world who had fought alongside him against a common enemy, was offering sanctuary. Not as a prisoner or specimen, but as a guest, ally. The concept defied coalition categorization. In the days that followed, as Kale's body healed, he observed the humans rebuilding their community. They incorporated salvaged void regime technology into their infrastructure with surprising ingenuity. They buried their dead with solemn rituals that honored sacrifice. They celebrated their victory with feasting and music that seemed chaotic, but followed complex patterns Kale gradually began to appreciate. The remaining Deathworlders integrated into this activity with varying degrees of success. Some maintained their military discipline, forming a protective perimeter around the settlement. Others cautiously explored human customs, sampling their food, attempting their dances, learning their languages without translation systems. Melix approached Kale one evening as he sat outside the main dwelling, watching the sunset paint Montana's sky in colors no coalition world could match. "Commander," the science officer greeted him formally. "Your recovery progresses well. Dr. Palmer is surprisingly effective despite her primitive methods," Kale acknowledged. "Have you completed your analysis of the local environment?" Melix's expression shifted to what Kale now recognized as excitement. "That's just it, Commander. I can't complete it. Earth's ecosystems are too complex, too interconnected for our classification systems. Every day, I discover new relationships between species, new adaptive mechanisms, new—" He paused, searching for words. "It's beautiful, terrifying, yes, but beautiful in its complexity." "Not the assessment I expected from Coalition Science Division," Kale observed. "I've abandoned Coalition parameters," Melix admitted. "They're inadequate for understanding this world." He hesitated. Vrax left a communication device. "The Coalition mothership is returning in 3 standard cycles to extract any survivors. I'm not planning to be among them." Kale wasn't surprised. "You're staying." "With a subset of our forces who share my curiosity. Yes. We've requested permission from the humans to establish a research outpost in the Northern Territories. They've agreed, with conditions." "And the rest?" Kale asked. "We'll return with you to report our findings. I presume." Melix studied him. "You are returning, aren't you, Commander?" It was the question Kale had been asking himself since regaining consciousness. His duty to the Coalition demanded he return, report the mission's failure, and face whatever consequences followed. But something deeper had taken root during his time on Earth, a recognition that the Coalition's understanding of the galaxy was fundamentally limited by its own rigid classifications. "I haven't decided," he answered honestly. 3 cycles later, a Coalition extraction vessel descended to the plateau. Vrax returned with it, his posture rigid with disapproval as he surveyed the Deathworlders who had integrated into human society. "Commander," he acknowledged Kale formally. "The mothership awaits your report. We depart in 1 standard hour." Kale nodded. "I'll prepare a full briefing for Coalition Command." "These humans," Vrax said, lowering his voice. "They're more dangerous than our intelligence suggested, not because of their technology or physical capabilities, but because of their adaptability, their chaos." "Yes," Kale agreed. "That's precisely what makes them valuable." Vrax's expression hardened. "Valuable as subjects, perhaps, but the Coalition will never accept them as equals." "Then the Coalition will eventually fail against them," Kale replied simply. The extraction was swift and efficient. Coalition protocols were followed to the letter as the surviving Deathworlders boarded the vessel. All except the 50 who had chosen to remain with Malix. And Kale himself, who stood at the edge of the landing zone as the ship prepared for departure. Vrax approached him one final time. "Commander, your place is aboard." Kale shook his head. "My place is where I can learn. Logistic officer. Earth has more to teach us than we could ever conquer from it." "You'll be classified as a deserter," Vrax warned. "Stripped of rank and standing." "Then strip them," Kale replied. "They mean nothing here." As the extraction vessel rose into Montana's clear sky, Big Jan joined Kale at the edge of the plateau. "Your ride's leaving without you," the human observed. "So it seems. What will you tell the others? Your coalition?" Kale watched the ship dwindle to a point of light, then vanish entirely. "The truth. That Earth isn't a death world to be conquered. It's a teacher to be respected." Big Jan nodded thoughtfully. "And what about you? What now?" Kale turned to look at the ranch, where humans and the remaining Deathworlders worked side by side, rebuilding what the battle had damaged. In the distance, Malix was setting up research equipment with almost childlike enthusiasm, cataloging Earth's infinite complexity. "Now," Kale said, "I learn how to live with your world instead of fighting against it." 1 year later, Kale stood before the Galactic Council's emergency session, his body still bearing the scars of Earth, but strengthened by its challenges. As the sole official survivor of the Coalition's failed Earth incursion, he had been summoned to testify about the threat this death world posed to galactic security. The Council Chamber, a vast amphitheater orbiting a neutral star, hummed with the representatives of 57,000 worlds. Some attended in person, others as holograms, all united in their fear of Earth after the disastrous mission reports. "Commander Kale," the High Counselor addressed him, "you led 1,000 elite Deathworlders to Earth's surface. Only you returned. Based on your experience, what is your assessment of the threat Earth poses to the Coalition?" Kale stood straight, no longer wearing his military uniform, but simple clothing inspired by Montana ranch wear. "Earth is not the threat you believe it to be." Murmurs rippled through the assembled representatives. "Explain," the High Counselor demanded. "The Coalition has misclassified Earth fundamentally," Kale stated. "It is not a death world in the conventional sense. It does not actively seek to kill through extreme environments or explicitly hostile life forms. Yet it claimed 999 of your soldiers," another counselor pointed out. "Because we approached it as conquerors," Kale replied. "Earth is not a death world, it's a mimetic hazard." The term, borrowed from Malix's research, caused confusion among the council. "Elaborate," the High Counselor instructed. "Earth's danger lies not in its individual elements, but in the chaotic, adaptive complexity of their interaction. Its organisms don't evolve to kill. They evolve to live alongside other evolving organisms in a constantly shifting ecological dialogue. Its inhabitants, humans, don't build their society on conquest and classification, but on adaptation and community." Kale gestured to the vast array of representatives. "The Coalition functions through rigid hierarchies and immutable laws. Earth functions through constant change and interconnection. We cannot conquer it because our very approach to conquest makes us vulnerable to its complexity. You suggest we abandon all plans to incorporate Earth into the coalition? The High Counselor asked, alarmed. I suggest you recognize it as something new, neither threat nor resource. But teacher, Kale's voice strengthened. I have lived among humans for a planetary cycle now. I have learned more about survival, adaptation, and resilience from them than in all my years as a Deathworlder. You speak treason, a military representative snarled. Earth has contaminated your loyalty. No, Kale countered. Earth has expanded my perspective. The humans have a concept called family, a bond stronger than military allegiance or species loyalty. They fought alongside us against the Void regime, not because of strategic calculation, but because they defend their family, their home. He looked around the chamber at the representatives of 57,000 worlds. The Coalition could learn from this, not how to conquer Earth, but how to incorporate its strength into our own civilization. His testimony caused an uproar. Some representatives demanded immediate quarantine of Earth and recall of all Coalition citizens. Others called for Kale's arrest as a traitor. A few, a very few, listened thoughtfully, considering the implications of his words. In the end, the Council voted to classify Earth as a prohibited zone, not because they accepted Kale's assessment, but because they feared what he represented. A Coalition officer contaminated by Earth's influence. Kale accepted their judgment without protest. He had fulfilled his duty by telling the truth. What the Coalition chose to do with that truth was beyond his control. When he returned to Earth, smuggled past the quarantine beacons by sympathetic traders, Big Jan was waiting at the plateau's edge. How'd your folks take the news? The human asked as they walked back toward the ranch. About as well as expected, Kale replied. They've declared Earth off limits and revoked my citizenship. Big Jan chuckled. Their loss. They crested the ridge overlooking the valley. Below, the research outpost Melix had established was thriving, a curious blend of Coalition technology and human practicality. The 50 Deathworlders who had chosen to remain had integrated into the local community, learning Earth's ways while sharing their own knowledge. More surprisingly, a small settlement of other non-Earth species had begun to form nearby. Traders, scientists, and explorers drawn by rumors of the Deathworld that wasn't. Despite the Coalition's quarantine, Earth was quietly becoming a nexus of cross-species cooperation. Melix's latest research is causing quite a stir, Big Jan remarked. His paper on adaptive agriculture has half the county reimagining their farms. Kale nodded, unsurprised. The science officer had flourished on Earth, his rigid Coalition methodologies giving way to a more holistic approach, inspired by human farming techniques. They reached Big Jan's ranch house, rebuilt and expanded to accommodate both human and non-human residents. In the garden Kale had planted, Earth vegetables grew alongside alien flora in a harmonious blend that Coalition botany had declared impossible. As the Montana sun set behind the distant mountains, painting the sky in colors no Coalition artist could capture, Kale reflected on the journey that had brought him here. He had come as a conqueror, one of 1,000 Deathworlders sent to subdue Earth's safest zone. Now he remained as a student, the sole survivor who had learned Earth's most important lesson. True strength lay not in dominating an environment, but in becoming part of its endless, beautiful complexity. In the distance, the research outpost's lights winked on as darkness fell. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new adaptations, new understanding. Earth would continue to surprise him, to teach him, to change him. And Kale, once commander of the Coalition Deathworlder Battalion, now simply a resident of Montana's plateau, would continue to learn.